Welcome to CosmoFactory, a podcast by Cosmoprof Worldwide Bologna, where we explore the entire cosmetics, personal care, and fragrance industry supply chain. I'm your host, Deanna Utrusky, and here at CosmoFactory, we look beyond the trends to discover the ideas, initiatives, and innovations that are truly advancing beauty. Let's get started. This episode is about healthy aging. It's about women's wellness and intimate care, about brand building, ingredient selection, supply chain agility, and much more. Joining me for today's episode of the CosmoFactory podcast is Sally Mueller, co-founder and CEO of Womaness. Sally, welcome to CosmoFactory.
Oh, thank you, Deanna. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad to chat with you. Now, it was just over 10 years ago that the industry was really watching independent beauty brands gain market share. And along with the indie movement, clean beauty was on the rise. And this is where today's women's wellness category seems to have begun. Brands like the Honey Pot Company and Lola launched in 2014 with a clean beauty approach to period care. And I give brands like those a lot of credit for normalizing intimate care products' place in the beauty sector. In today's market, menopause brands fit right into the women's wellness conversation. Sally, this is where I'll start asking you some questions. Can you describe for us what menopause care is? What is this?
Well, menopause care is, I would say, a very comprehensive plan, including um, finding the right doctor that is skilled and trained in menopause. So not it doesn't mean that it could, it's just a gynecologist. It could be a nurse practitioner, it could be a gynecologist, but they have to be trained in menopause care and really understand the stage of perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. So I would say the first part of menopause care is finding the right doctor and the right expert. And then I think it's also the right over-the-counter products. So there's, obviously Womaness offers over-the-counter products. There's other brands in the market as well. But it is finding the right combination of products and services that really meet your needs. And, there's over 45, maybe even more symptoms of menopause. So really understanding the changes that you're going through in your body and how they relate to your menopause journey as well. Making that connection so you know what issues to solve.
Yes, that makes very good sense. We can't solve something if we don't know what it is we're trying to solve.
Right.
That's perfect. And I would call Womaness, the brand you lead, a cross-category menopause brand. I believe you're investor backed as a startup. You're based in the U.S. You launched about 5 years ago. And correct me on any of those details if
Yes.
I don't have them right. But tell us about the Womaness mission and product portfolio. Where do you fit in this menopause care concept?
Well, Womaness is all about modernizing healthy aging and with a particular focus, obviously, on addressing the major symptoms of perimenopause through postmenopause. So we really specialize, I would say, in helping that midlife woman through that entire transition, which she's in for about 40% of her life. A lot of women don't realize that menopause starts and in perhaps your late 30s, 40s, and it goes until you leave the earth. So it's a huge part of our life. And our mission is to really educate her, provide support through community, obviously offer products that are clinically proven, affordable. You mentioned clean. We've worked really hard formulating products that are clean, meaning clinically, proven ingredients, but also natural ingredients wherever possible. And all of our products are hormone-free, soy-free, vegan, meets all of the European standards for clean as well. So
Mhm.
we're really proud of the quality of our products.
Very good. And if you would, can you talk us through the product portfolio insofar as categories? I'm assuming you have things that the beauty industry is very familiar with, like topical skincare, but what sort of products do you offer?
Yeah, so we offer skincare, body care. We offer vaginal care, so vaginal moisturizers, as well as other sexual wellness products, and then supplements. So we really are we would say three major categories, but our whole philosophy is, we think about it from head to toe and from inside out. Wellness is not just inside job, it's also what you put on your body. So it's really important to make sure that you're using products that are, very healthy for you and obviously absent of any, chemicals and toxins as well. So
Sure, sure. And you mentioned education a moment ago. I think that fits in with what I think about in terms of brand building. As I suggested, Womaness is a reasonably new brand, and I'm curious how you're balancing educating the market, educating your customer and maybe your retail partners and that sort of thing, with the challenge of then differentiating your brand in this new menopause category.
yeah, I mean, when we first launched 5 years ago, we came out, I would say, very loud and proud about menopause. And, we were pitching all, the morning shows. And I'll never forget, our PR agent at the time said, so and so morning show doesn't want to cover vaginas at 9 a.m. in the morning. Well, guess what? Now they are. So, we really feel like we were on the forefront of educating women about aging and menopause. We were obviously really focused on changing the conversation and making sure that, this is not a stigmatized transition in a woman's life, that she's actually in the peak of her life. It can have a silver lining. Yes, it's hard to get through it, and some days are really tough, but overall, I think we're all better as we really grow in this stage. So, I think that we have differentiated through this voice of the brand. I think we get a lot of credit for being real women that are helping, like real, our team is all women. Michelle, my co-founder, and I are just normal women. We're not celebrities. And we are working so hard to help women, and women see it, and I think that's really helped us differentiate in the market because we do have, a point of view. We are real women speaking, to this huge audience. And it's hard because, we don't have a built-in celebrity following, but I think it's more authentic. I think it's relatable to women as well. So it's really helping us break through.
That's so interesting to think about. And I do have some supply chain questions for you. Many of our CosmoFactory listeners work along the industry supply chain. And you mentioned the concept of free from, right? This idea is still fairly common in beauty marketing, as in free from certain ingredients.
Right.
You mentioned products on your e-commerce site show up as, I believe you said hormone free, but I think I saw language that says estrogen free. You suggested you've made a choice to be soy free. I definitely want to talk about ingredient selection. I wonder, are you choosing traditional ingredients that you're being shown that have maybe new testing data with benefits that are appropriate for the menopause consumer? Are you finding truly new ingredient innovations in the marketplace, or what's available when you're shopping for ingredients for a brand like this?
Yeah, when we first launched, we launched with 13 products, and which is a lot. And we ended, up really hiring experts in each one of the categories. So we had a nutritionist as well as a scientist helping us identify all the right ingredients for a supplement. So we knew what symptoms we wanted to address, and then they helped us figure out, okay, what are the latest, the science to back some of these these ingredients that would address these symptoms. So, for example, we chose to invest in an ingredient called pycnogenol.
Hmm.
It's not widely known. I think it's gaining a lot of traction, but it helps with blood circulation. It's specifically helping women with hot flashes, even period cramps. So there's a lot of science backing that, and a lot of, obviously clinical research that's been backing that ingredient. So we decided to really focus on ingredients that had proven results, um, that some ingredients, the consumer would recognize. So there was that built-in trust, but also introduced some new ingredients that had the research backing them.
Hmm.
So it's all about efficacy, as you know. I mean, especially our customer, if she doesn't have a good experience with product, she's not going to come back. So for us, it was at all costs, it was about product performance,
Hmm. Hmm.
not worrying about what price point we were going to hit per se. It had to perform. And then we surrounded it with, beautiful packaging and, just the overall experience. But it has to start with the ingredients and the formulations.
Sure. And, that makes very good sense for anyone who's ever developed ingredients or formulated a product. The efficacy data is always, I think, the most relevant. And I think the example you gave with pycnogenol is a really helpful one. Folks in the industry or in the wellness industry might be very familiar with this ingredient, and the team behind pycnogenol has invested remarkably in clinical research over the years, and demonstrated significant efficacy for different applications in different markets. So I think the fact that they're able to bring that to a brand like Womaness and show you product efficacy that's relevant for your particular consumer, just speaks to that sort of level of investment. And I think sometimes ingredient companies, I don't think they're shy to do it, but there's sort of there's such an appetite for newness in the cosmetics and personal care industry that if you're not launching a new ingredient, um, there's almost some sort of hesitation between saying, "But look, we have new data, and it's really interesting. You can use this ingredient for an application or a new product category like menopause care." And I think investing in that sort of clinical research is you've pointed out how relevant it is, and certainly many companies are doing that. Of
We've
course,
also
go ahead.
formed, sorry, I was going to say, we have direct relationships with these ingredient companies that we work with. So, Pycnogenol is owned by Horfag. We work directly with them to understand, their latest studies. We also share what we're learning from our customers too. And that collaboration, I think, is so important just to
Yeah.
keep up with, what consumers are responding to, what's
Mhm.
performing for everyone. So, I obviously just mentioned pycnogenol, which is in our menopause supplement, but we've also done the same thing with our skincare. For example, when we were formulating all of our skincare, and we worked with a formulator that had a lot of experience with aging skin, and she worked side by side with Michelle and I on all the product development.
Mhm.
And then we worked with the lab, obviously, and going back and forth, for over a year on perfecting all the formulations. But I remember the day when she said, there's this really interesting ingredient that's now available called Hyaclear 7. And it's an advanced form of hyaluronic acid. So we knew we wanted to use hyaluronic acid, but we knew that aging skin, menopausal skin, needs so much more hydration. And so Hyaclear 7 was so interesting to us because it was a more potent version of hyaluronic acid. So we
Mhm.
ended up putting Hyaclear 7 in all of our skincare.
Mhm.
So it was a collaboration, I would say, between the experts that we hired, the ingredient companies, and obviously the labs. And, it took what, almost 2 years to formulate all these products.
Sure. No, but it's nice to hear, not only about your team's effort, but about the industry collaboration that you've been able to um, be a part of. That's speaks well to everyone involved for sure. There is, of course, more to the cosmetic supply chain than ingredients. You and I spoke earlier this year, and you pointed out the issue of MOQs, minimum order quantities, a challenge for every brand. But you also told me that suppliers could find some other ways to provide support in terms of timelines or financing options.
Yes.
I'm curious to know from your experience building the brand, if you happen to suddenly find yourself working as a product manufacturer, what would you do to accelerate the success of emerging brands?
Well, I think you hit on some of the things that I would consider. Lowering MOQs, so that we can test, we can and I'm talking maybe going from like 10,000 units to 5,000 units. It's not 100 units. We
Right.
understand that you have to have some skin in the game and you have to give things a chance. But I think in retrospect, had we been able to lower some of the MOQs, we wouldn't have obviously taken so much of our cash and invested in an inventory that, perhaps without any learning, right? So that some of that inventory just sat there and did not really move. And some of it was obviously moving really well. So being, I think, open to figuring out the agility around the minimum order quantities, I think is really helpful for emerging brands. Um, I also think that some of the new modern suppliers are really thinking about financing and they might have the opportunity to get financing from their own debt provider, which they can pass on to the brand. So that's
What will that look like? Help me understand that better.
um, payment plans that are conducive for, obviously startups, and we have one happening right now, and the supplier that we're working with is he's a former operator, like a brand
Hmm.
operator. And so he really understands how hard it is to find the cash for, 50% down upfront, 50% upon shipping. And so he's worked with us on figuring out the timing of everything so that we perhaps can be paid by a retailer before we have to pay the final invoice to him. And I understand you have to kind of earn that ability. It doesn't happen overnight, but I do think what would be helpful is having suppliers be more innovative on the money or finance side of things.
Hmm.
Many of these suppliers have, very established businesses, at least the ones we've worked with, and they can get credit lines as well, but maybe the emerging brand cannot. So it's like, how do you leverage the, financial, I would say, capacity of the supplier to really help the emerging brand?
Yeah, no, that's helpful to hear about. Just let the industry brainstorm with you. I
I know, I
I like
know.
this.
Yeah. And we've had the gamut of different models. And obviously, when we first started, we had very, very strict payment terms, because we were just starting. We didn't really have the credibility yet. But we were also venture backed. So we were able to pretty quickly prove that, we can stretch, the payments out, get better payment terms. But as you know, with a startup, even in the first 10 years of the business, it's all about cash management. So we could grow a lot faster, but cash is always the issue.
Hmm. Hmm.
So if a supplier can figure out how to help brands like ours, it's just very advantageous for all of us.
Hmm. No, and you're pointing out to, sort of the speed of growth, um, and how related that is to to financing options, I think is very relevant because suppliers are often looking for the brands that will scale quickly,
Right.
and to know that they can be a part of it in this way, I'm sure is very helpful. So I do have another question for you, but before we get to that, I want everyone listening to know that it was about 3 or 4 months ago, in episode 70 of the Cosmo Factory podcast, I interviewed the CEO of Gen M. This is a UK-based organization that created a standardized seal system to help consumers recognize products with specific benefits relevant to menopause. So if the menopause market opportunity is a topic that you're interested in learning more about, you might want to play that episode rather when you're done listening to this one. But Sally, getting back to our conversation here, we've been talking very much about the current women's wellness and menopause beauty movements, along with the supply chain. And I really appreciate your sharing those insights because I know they're very helpful for our listeners. But while we're thinking about women's wellness, about menopause beauty, there are at the same time a number of personal care companies doing quite well that own and operate legacy brands in the intimate care category. I'm thinking of companies like Edgewell. I'm thinking of Comb, P&G, just for example. I'm not going to ask you to comment on any of those companies specifically, but I would love to hear your thoughts about the direction that this sector could and should be going in.
I think that we need legacy brands, right? They validate the category. They're obviously still productive on shelf at retail. Um, but I think women are wanting some of these new modern brands, you know, like ours, based on our research too, and just the feedback that we've gotten. I think that women are not wanting to use their mother's menopause products, is how they say it. So there is this openness to trying new products. It's all about, as you can imagine, building trust. And that's what those legacy brands have. They do have trust. They do have a name. And so they totally, like I said, warrant the space on the shelf, but there's room for more innovation happening. And I think just more companies that have education and community and just all of the components of a modern brand, that surround the product. So many of those legacy brands, in my opinion, are kind of soulless.
Yeah, the
And
consumer connection is changing, isn't it?
yeah, the consumer connection is changing. And I think women want to spend money with women-backed organizations or companies. And so it's a whole package. It's not just about selling product. It's about the fact that we are real women, working really hard to support other real women. So super proud of that. But there's nothing wrong with these legacy companies as well.
No, of course. I think that's something we recognize in every sort of niche of the industry. There's so much room for collaboration and sharing in the marketplace, and there's a customer for everyone. There
Absolutely.
really is. Well, Sally, you've been very generous with your time and your insights today. I thank you for being my guest on the Cosmo Factory podcast.
Thanks, Deanna. It was so fun to talk to you.
Thank you so much for listening. If you find the Cosmo Factory podcast useful, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star review and share your thoughts so even more cosmetic industry professionals can discover the Cosmo Factory. I'm Deanna Utrusky. Please join me again next Tuesday for a new episode of the Cosmo Factory podcast.